oftentimes people don't really have insights into what motivates you. And so the challenge becomes, how do you study those motivations? Not only don't they have insights, which many of you know, they actually have the wrong insight. So if you asked people, and we have done this, if you had a treadmill at home, would you work out more or would you work out less, as opposed to if you had to go to a gym? As you can imagine, majority of the people say I would work out more if I had a treadmill at home. But if you look at the data, they actually tend to work out less. And the reason is, when they're answering that question, what motivates me, they're thinking, oh, if the treadmill's at home, it's so easy to do the treadmill, whereas I have to go to a gym. What they're not thinking about when they answer that question is, well, when I'm at home, I have too many other competing distractions. But once I'm at the gym, there's nothing really else to do but get on the damn treadmill. If you look at products like the 100-calorie packs, and they're a small part of the snack business, it's not a huge part of most people's portfolio, but it's really started long ago at Mars, many, many years ago, when they launched the miniature candy business. What they noticed is the motivation is, for a lot of people, is to not eat too much of these things. But what happens here is, I'm willing to give you, the marketer, a premium to give me less of something I like too much, right? I like it so much that I don't want to have so much of it, but I'll pay a price premium so that you give me less of it. Because that's what the 100-calorie snacks are. Their price per ounce is much higher than what you would if you bought a large pack. So it's an interesting story around sort of how do you take unstated motivation and the action to understand what the insights might be. I want to transition to, as I said, some few big ideas in behavioral economics. These are not my ideas. I've done some work in that, but these are ideas from the field. The first one I want to start with is the notion of goals. One of the key insights from goals and why it's different from needs and why it's important to you is that goals are dynamic. They can change. They can fluctuate. So right now, when you're sitting in the room, your learning goal might be highlighted. When you're at lunch, your goal for socialization might be highlighted. So people have multiple goals. I've showed 4 here, but people have dozens of goals. You have mother goal, father goal, daughter goal, social couch potato self, professional self. The reason the goals are important is that goals drive attention. If you're in a learning goal right now, you'll listen to me. If you're in a goal thinking about something else right now, you will not pay as much attention to me. Similarly with consumers, the key is, how do we get them at the goal when it's dynamic, when they're thinking about this? They draw attention, they draw preference, and they draw choice. This is a fitness center. If you sit on that chair, your weight appears on that blue side scale. And then it tells you can join the gym, which is right next door. So maybe you stop sitting on it after a while rather than joining the gym. The reason it's important is because a lot of non-traditional media is really about receptivity. How do I get people at the high moments in time when they're thinking about this? Because most of the time, we are not. We did this field study. If you wanted people to take the stairs as opposed to the elevators, which is what many companies were doing in the health, this is something we were doing with United Health, telling people taking stairs is good all the time, nothing happened. But if you put in front of the elevators, please take the stairs, which is at the moment of time I'm about to take the elevator, somebody told me, hey, why don't you take the stairs? It was much more effective. So how do you get people at the moment of truth, if you like? It's much more effective. You will get a much more big bang for your communication budget than you typically do. The challenge often with companies is you have a shopper group on shopper insights, you have a customer insights group, and they often don't speak to each other in some companies, or in many companies. Shopper reports to sale, consumer insights reports to marketing. If you look at this slide, the reason I want to point this out is when we shop, we have very different goals in mind. Most of us, when we looked at the research, the goals were around price and health and how the hell do I get out of here. When you're consuming a product, you have very different goals. I just finished writing a report. What do I want to do? I want to have a nice, relaxing beverage. Or it sits in the evening, my goal is different. It's 8 in the morning, my goal is different. You really have to activate some of the goals in consumption at the shopping situation. Because if you don't, people don't think about it. You don't look up at a massive Campbell's soup aisle and think about when I'm going to consume it. Your eyes just glaze over all that and you say, who wants a can of soup? So the question is, how do you merge the consumption activation or goals that are relevant at consumption to the goals at shopping? The second idea, which sort of related to the first idea, that consumers have goals, but consumers have conflicting goals. You want to socialize, but you want to do well professionally. You want to save, but you want to spend. You want to do well academically, but you want to also have time for your family and friends. And so the idea is, if you have conflicting goals, what do people do? And I like this. One of the things, I looked at this literature, now there are like maybe 100 papers on this. But surprising that literature hasn't made much more progress than this slide, which is basically when people have conflicting goals, they try to balance. They have something good with something bad. I want to have my chocolate. I want to have my pizza with some Diet Coke. The third thing I want to spend time on, this is sort of made very popular by the recent book, Danny Kahneman, on thinking fast and slow. And this is a huge paradigm shift in thinking about how the mind works. And so I'll take a few minutes to sort of spend time on that and sort of give you a flavor of that. Basically, what is the theory here? The theory is the way the mind works, we have two systems. They're not literally two systems in the brain, but it's really how the mind works. One system is what Malcolm Gladwell would call fast, quick, automatic, intuitive, emotional. They're both working in parallel, system one and system two. But because system one is fast, it gives you an answer faster than system two can give you. System two has to do a little bit of math. System one doesn't do anything. It just looks at it and says, okay, I like it, I don't like it. So it's like if you're listening to me, you have a system one reaction, I like it, I don't like it. System two is, oh, let me listen to the arguments, the content, is it interesting, how do I use it? That's system two. But system one has already generated an answer for you. Unfortunately, when the answer is already generated for you by system one, system two is kind of lazy. If system one likes the answer, then it says, I'll just go with it. It's my intuition, it's my gut, let's go with that. So system two doesn't typically question system one. So here's an example that I like. One of my colleagues, Shane, gave it to me. He says, which one of them is likely to be a mass murderer? You probably already have the answer in your mind, and I hope it's not me. Most people judge the person in the middle, who happens to be a chaired professor at Caltech, Colin Camber, one of our beloved colleagues. But the idea is your mind kind of just uses it and says, this I can see he might have done it, right? And so the system one gives you a very quick response, and the system two might now kick in and say, should I judge by the face? No, and I say, I don't really know, so let's just go with that anyway. So that's how system one works. System one is intuitive, but system one is actually quite complex. Are these two the same person? You immediately might have thought, yes, they are. If you wanted to do it on a computer, it would take a computer a much longer time to figure this out. So it's not that, I don't want to emphasize that system one is always incorrect, intuitions are wrong, but intuitions are based on certain machinery that can do certain tasks very well, and other tasks they can't do very well. This particular one, is this the same object as this, is often harder for system one, even though it's actually an easier task than looking at two faces and asking, are those two faces belong to the same person? How many murders are there each year in Michigan? When this question was asked by my colleague, the answer was 100. Michigan, farmland, lots of nice places, 100. How many murders are there in Detroit? 200. So obviously there cannot be more murders in Detroit than Michigan. But most people, when you think about Detroit, you suddenly think about the total wreck there is. So system one relies on intuition. What's really happening now, I think the real interesting challenge and fun area in CPGs is, how do I activate system one? So system one is all about, how do I make something intuitively appealing? It could be through design, it could be through messaging, it could be through the packaging, but what is it that I can do which will allow the system one to say, yes, that's good. Keep in mind, system one doesn't always generate a response. 17 times 24, I have no idea. can you do something in your marketing, because most people are going to spend very few neurons to decide, can I generate a system 1 response? What made something intuitively appealing? But system 2 stops working when you're multitasking. So if you're multitasking, right now you're responding to an email, you're thinking about your meeting, or you're driving and you're speaking on the phone, the multitasking makes you focus much more on system 1. A question that interests me, and I haven't seen much data on this, I've talked to Nielsen a lot, to IRI as well, how do people shop when they're tired? You hear all the time, 80% of people are tired. What data do you have to show how the processes change? I say, we don't have anything yet. How do people shop late at night, online also? How do people shop in different places? This was a study we did, basically we gave people shopping baskets and asked them to remember an 8-digit number or a 3-digit number. It's much harder to remember an 8-digit number, which means your system 2 is kind of occupied. We occupied your working memory, so as you might imagine, we find that under this high cognitive load, people's basket sizes were much larger. So they were kind of buying much more habitually, as opposed to thinking, do I need this? Do I want this? When will I use it? Kind of thing. We also know from one of the big ideas from behavioral economics is that consumer self-control is finite. And this is the reason why Ulysses tied himself to the mast, so that when the siren starts singing, he's not going to be able to lose control of the ship. This is the last point, and I'll stop, because it's an important concept, is the psychological distance. The idea of psychological distance is when people look at something cognitively, they look at different things when it's close to you, when you look through a microscope, or when you look through a telescope, when it's far from you. So when MSI, which is a smart thing to do, when anyone invites you to give a talk many, many months before this, you think about why would you want to give the talk. It's an interesting audience, learning experience, it'll be fun. But if they had invited me last week, I would think, how far is Boston? What else do I have to do? You ask different sets of questions. Similarly, consumers ask different questions when they are in the shopping aisle. Do I buy this product versus when they watch an ad on TV? Thank you.